So Porto won at the death the other night. Was it a case of the better team lost, but the smarter team won?
I think game management comes to mind. Martinelli's trying to go forward, isn't he? Trying to win the game right at the death. And they get punished. You could say, was the keeper slightly too far forward in the goal? I thought Declan Rice, who was absolutely magnificent, maybe a bit of fatigue, could have got closer to the ball. But it's all about learning, Jim. I'm a little bit concerned. It's 3 weeks now before we see the replay. Yeah. Which, we're very used, aren't we, to holding that hurt and using it a week later or 2 weeks later. But 3 weeks, there's a bit of football in between. But I'm pretty certain that it's only half time in the competition. Arsenal will come out firing. It'll be an electric night when they come into town, Porto.
Okay, actually, while you've been chatting through the virus, which you're fighting against extremely, extremely valiantly, Martin, the messages are coming in. I'll select one. They're all on a similar theme. And, Martin, you can guess this is coming your way. Jim, you've got to ask Martin, how can he say Bellingham isn't world class and Saka is? Now, I didn't see this live, but I've seen...
I didn't say Saka was either, by the way.
Well, I've seen a few clips of it afterwards. This was you in conversation the other night with Rio Ferdinand over in Portugal.
Ederson, Alisson, Kyle Walker, Virgil van Dijk, Rodri, Kevin De Bruyne, and the list goes, you can see it there for yourself. Do you disagree with any of them?
Well, I think Bellingham is one that I would question. Obviously, of course, he's in amazing form, what he's doing to Real Madrid right now, but we look at Saka. Saka's been the England Player of the Year the last 2 years, and Bellingham's not got a look in on that, and he's still on Rio's list. So, I don't know, maybe Rio's been a bit mischievous
you
to the Arsenal fans.
They've actually got that list a little bit wrong, because Bellingham was on the list just below that on his own. He's edging into there, but I think the thing that maybe lets him not be on that list for me right now is just time.
Of course.
I think he will be there.
He's amazing footballer.
I think he's in world-class form, but I think you just need that time, and that's where I say Saka's got that world-class potential, but he just hasn't been exposed to the knockout stage.
The longevity is what we're looking for, yeah.
Now that, Martin, was picked up everywhere. So, as the dust settles, I suppose there's only one question in town. Is Bellingham currently world-class?
Okay, you were saying that I said that Saka was world-class, so I'm not sure how you picked that up, but now you've pulled back from that, have you? Have you pulled back from that? So you're saying that I said Saka was world-class. I didn't say that. You're quite hearing that, listening to that recording, that I didn't actually say that. What I'm saying is that...
You were debating whether or not Bellingham and or Saka are world-class.
I think it's a little bit different for footballers. I think you can be an athlete. I think you can be a 100-metre champion. You can go and blast and get a world record, and suddenly you become world-class in one moment. But I think for footballers, you can have world-class moments, but longevity is the key. We're seeing you week in and week out in your era. If you are the best, then you have to be in that echelons of world class. So I think it's some time to go for these two young men. And I think, why would we try to judge right now? Some people do. They get excited with it. I think they're fantastic talents. I think Foden is another one who's starting to come into our thinking. We talked last week about that amazing picture book that De Bruyne has of seeing the picture, and Foden, he's sharing it with Foden. Foden can see everything now that De Bruyne can. So we've got wonderful footballers, but I think it's so early in their careers, I think it's too early to judge.
I think I would go with Martin in that. Would you?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
I mean, it's way too early. It's not a phrase you like anyway. Is anybody world class?
Because I think it's overused. I think Martin's absolutely right. When people are in good form, all of a sudden, for some reason or other, the superlatives get thrown around that they're world class, and like Marcus Rashford gets called that. He's not world class. I don't think Saka's world class at this moment in time. I think their performances are at a very high level, and if they continue at that level, and they can get into any side, because like Souness says, the definition of a world-class player is somebody that can get into any side. And I question whether these two players, not so much Bellingham, I think Bellingham is a unique phenomenon. I think there are other players in Saka's position that are doing as many things as Saka is doing. But Bellingham, despite the fact that he's been abroad and been in Dortmund, and we see it sparingly, when he plays for England, obviously we're seeing it more visibly when he's playing for Real Madrid now, and he steps into an environment like Real Madrid where lots of players shrink. People that go to Man United shrink. They don't come up to the standard of the club's expectations. Clubs like Real Madrid carry that perspective, and Bellingham steps out from underneath it. So he has the potential of being one of the greatest English midfield players that we've produced. He has that potential. And
it's early days, but he's quite unique, isn't he? When you watch him, he's a driving force. Do you know? And he's to go to Dortmund, change of culture. To go with, just living abroad, can you imagine? I think he took his parents with him, actually. There's talk of that.
Yeah, they did.
And that support network's invaluable. Yeah. He's gone to Real Madrid, and he's just taken it by the scruff of the neck, and he's dragging that team with him now.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's a good discussion point, and that's been picked up by Mitch, who's a Tottenham fan. Yeah, I mean, this discussion point you're having, Martin has managed to bring something tangible back from his visit to Portugal, which is more than can be said for Arsenal, says Mitch, the Tottenham fan. Do you still take Arsenal to progress?
Of course. Conceição was, quite tough after the game, talking about, one team wanted to win, one wanted to play football. I don't think Arsenal really did play football. I think that was the issue. I think you go to an away stadium like that, and when you got possession as much as Arsenal did, you think, it's almost a relief, but it's what you do with it. And Arsenal need to get their ball wider to Martinelli and to Saka much more often. Odegaard only really comes alive when those two players receive the ball, Jim.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of like I don't think it was working quite right with Ben White going into midfield. This is a tactical thing now we're talking about. That was at the foot of how they did their structure and how they develop things. So I think there'll be an adjustment against Newcastle at the weekend.
Is Bellingham? One or two people are suggesting Bellingham's favourite for the Ballon d'Or. Do you think he is? The Ballon d'Or.
Well, that'd be interesting. I mean,
that would be incredible, wouldn't it?
Well, then that starts to put him into that area, doesn't it?
It puts him into that category.
But then Michael Owen won it once. So you say Michael Owen's world class. But for a moment in time, maybe he was world class.
Yeah. I mean, it's a phrase. I must be honest with you. I think it's a phrase that unless you've played the game, you don't really know. And you've played the game at the highest level, and you know what it takes for a player to be at a level that is recognised as the elite.
It's interesting how players forget. Ruud Gullit was a player that I played against for England. What an incredible talent. And it's like if someone's not championing for that person, we forget them. There's a whole host of, Van Basten was an incredible talent. These players drift off. I mean, over came Maradona and Cruyff and Pele, that Messi and Ronaldo. Those two now, it's like a changing of the guard, isn't it? So we're looking now for who's best
going
player in the world.
Gullit won a Ballon d'Or, though, didn't he?
Yeah,
but that was back in the days when the Ballon d'Or, when it was more in kin with the European Football of the Year, wasn't it? It was a European.
Who did you say, Simon?
Gullit.
Yeah, that's right, but we don't really talk about him too much right now.
Yeah. Well, his day has come and gone, and as you rightly say, Martin, it's who's coming through now, and people like Bellingham and Saka very much coming through now. Certainly Saka will come through and play tomorrow night for Arsenal against Newcastle. It's a TalkSPORT exclusive, 8 o'clock. I think you're working at that, Martin, are you not? Commentary from Sam Matthews and former Chelsea defender Scott Minto for that. Martin Keown will battle through his current sickness and will get to his beloved Emirates to see that one tomorrow night. Arsenal Newcastle. That is then, this is now, and a lot to get through this morning.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.